are slave laws in the Old Testament, and we even see a lot of people like Abraham and Job. They all have slaves, people whom we look up to. So, how does a Christian think about slavery? Now, another huge problem that the atheists and the skeptics they have with Christianity is that Christianity doesn't condemn slavery. Uh, Now, because there are slave laws in the Old Testament, and we even see a lot of people like Abraham and Job. They all have slaves, people whom we look up to. So, how does a Christian think about slavery?
Yeah, well, we understand that where the Israelites begin, where Abraham begins, there's some things that need to be worked out. And so God begins where Abraham is, calls him, tells him that he's going to be the source of blessing to nations. You know, it looks like Abraham has good relationships with those in his household. But when it comes to the actual legislation regarding servitude in the Old Testament, in the law of Moses, what a lot of people think is, oh, slaves. They think of colonialism. They think of the oppression of blacks and so on. Well, if you look carefully, you see that this is nothing like, in the Old Testament, that is nothing like colonial slavery. There's no, kidnapping was prohibited by Israel as well as by other nations around Israel. So but that's how modern slavery began, through kidnapping people, through this slave trade that was actually involving tribal chieftains in Africa who were actually betraying their own people by allowing them to be taken by white slave traders. You also have protections against those who are, say, runaway slaves from other nations. If they're being mistreated, they can come to Israel and settle in any of Israel's cities. So there is actually protection that was far different from what we see going on, say, before the Civil War here in America, where if a slave ran away, there's the fugitive slave law that demanded that they be returned, their property, so they had to be returned to their owners. This is different from what we see in Israel. These slaves are human beings, and they are to be given protection rather than to be sent back to their masters. And in fact, nations like the Babylonians, the Hittites, and so forth, they had extradition treaties that if a slave ran away to your country, please, send him back to us, and we'll do the same for you. But not for Israel. You're not to send him back. So there is great protection that is here for those who are slaves. So when you have and if you injured your slave, knocked out his eye or tooth, then he would be set free from his debt. And that's why people would become servants in the first place, is because they would be, they were impoverished and they had no alternative. So it was one of those, it's not a perfect situation, but there were some ways in which you could help to get out of debt, or at least find a comfortable setting where you could live even the rest of your life. So that's why, the ideal is in Exodus 21, where if a servant says, I love my master, my employer, and basically makes an arrangement so that he can live with his employer the rest of his life, because it's security. First of all, you're part of the family living in the same household. You are you have security. There is provision. There is, clothing, food, shelter, work to do, and so forth. So ideally, it could be a marvelous arrangement where you don't have to be your own boss, but you can actually have someone else who's your boss, and it actually brings great satisfaction and joy. So that would be the ideal situation. So rather than thinking about oppression, the goal is ultimately that there be peace and joy and love and affection within those households. So wherever you see slave laws I think servitude is talk about being a servant or even a worker. That is a better term than the term slave, because, of course, the term slave conjures up all sorts of negative images, and that is not at all what's going on in the Old Testament. There is a dignity, there's an agency that servants have that you don't see in the modern world in terms of colonialism and the slave trade and so forth. They were property. They were regarded as a piece of furniture, but that is not how the Israelites are to understand foreigners in their land, or even those who are working for them as servants. And God reminds the Israelites 36 times in the law of Moses. They're to be reminded that they were once slaves. They were once aliens in the land of Egypt. So take care of the foreigner in your midst. Those who are the most vulnerable in Israel are the ones that had God's undivided attention. They're the ones who are to be cared for because they were vulnerable. And God reminds the Israelites of their own vulnerability in Egypt. So there is great care, not for the high and mighty, but rather for those who could be taken advantage of. And that is the heartbeat that you see going throughout the Old Testament.
And I think what's even more amazing is in the New Testament, uh, Paul says, I believe, if someone is in Christ, he's no longer your slave, he's your brother.
That's
And
right.
This is, and Paul said this in the first century. This is centuries before the Civil War and centuries before before slavery was abolished. The Bible has always been saying this. It's not like Christians are singing a different tune in the 21st century. Christianity has always been saying the same thing.
Indeed, that's right. Yep.
Do you feel unequipped to talk to your friends about Jesus? Do you want to know more about God and His Word? Are you struggling with sin? And do you desire to pursue a holy life? Then this channel is for you.